Stephen Ramsay's essay, Who's In and Who's Out, is part of your reading. Although it doesn't provide a comprehensive view of the debates in the digital humanities, it is a good place to start, especially if you want to participate in these debates yourself. So what do you think about them? Before we move on to Dr. Shoubhik Mukherjee's second lecture, which is on an important aspect of the digital humanities, that is, digital cultures, let us take a quick look back at what we have learned so far. First of all, Professor Omlan Dasgupta, in his introductory lectures, spoke of the digital condition, the idea that we, at this point of human history, are situated in an age where the digital permeates our lives, whether we like it or not, and in ways we may take for granted and therefore not notice at all. Within this broader notion of the digital condition is the study of the digital humanities. Dr. Shoubhik Mukherjee introduced you to a few key concepts in his previous lecture. He says that we cannot think of the digital humanities as a single monolithic concept, but must regard it in all its variety. One part of it, he said, has to do with archives and digital texts and their quantitative analysis. The other part, about which we'll hear him shortly, deals with digital cultures. What do we mean by digital cultures? It can mean a vast number of things. It would really be pointless to attempt an all-encompassing definition because, to be honest, there are many things under digital cultures that we haven't even conceived of as yet. Things, events, practices, concepts that human beings will start to engage with, but we can't foresee even if this new thing were to begin the day after. Instead, let us look at some broad topics that may be studied under the umbrella of digital cultures. From these, you will most certainly be able to form an idea of what else may or may not be a part of such studies. In fact, by the end of the lectures, we will hope that many of you would be able to suggest new ideas for study or things that could be built, such as archives or programs, based on your experience. The course will not be able to offer you all the learning you would require to build these perhaps, but you would certainly be able to conceive of things that you may want to do in the digital domain. In no specific order, let's begin with an idea at random. Have human interactions remained the same as before after the arrival of the internet and social media? No. If you have a profile on a social media website such as Facebook, you will recognize that your online persona and your real-life persona don't always match. How many of us actually roll on the floor laughing when we type in its abbreviation ROFL in the chat box? Do we narrate poems or quote important people as often in everyday lives as we do on social media? So our behavior changes from the offline to the online world. Areas that are being studied or can be studied for social behavior may include, say, the confessions pages that some institutions have, political groups pages, sports video pages, and so on, from which we can understand the pulse of a certain group of people and how they feel towards various things. As you will have noticed yourself, this change in online habits of expressing ourselves has also entered into the ways in which we behave in real life. Do you think it's time we drop this distinction between virtual and real life? Aren't the two getting confused all the time? Anyway, that's a separate question. Say for example, the ways in which people mark the death of a near and dear person. For person A, it may be perfectly natural to notify on social media that so and so has passed away. It may be natural to express one's grief on the internet. For person B, this may be revolting. How can you reduce your emotions to a series of zeros and ones, they may say. The fact remains that as with earlier technological changes, this change in technology too has brought about differences in the ways in which we express emotions, and as such, it can be said to have brought about a change in the history of expressing emotions as well. Technology has a role to play in this, and without taking sides, we can perhaps reflect on the nature of human emotions if we study this seriously. The published works of art, novels, poetry, cinema, all undergo changes owing to the digital cultures. By that, we are not even entering into how the digital image has changed cinema or photography, but how technological changes are reflected in human lives and are then featured in works of art. When the radio came, for example, a poet by the name of Guillaume Apollinaire wrote poetry in the shape of radio waves. You can see a sample of such poetry here. There are poems that are appearing now, written in the form of, say, computer codes. It's called code poetry. All this is very exciting to study and needs to be taken up seriously by researchers in the fields of cultural studies so as to bring the digital into their domain. You can find some examples of code poetry in your reading list. What else can we think of? A branch of study in the digital cultures field that is gathering momentum is the study of computer games. First of all, there is the branch of studies that focuses on video games as narratives, much in the same way as a novel or a play. If cinema adaptations of books are worth studying as serious texts of translation and adaptation, why not games, people argue? The theoretical tools for studying something that obviously requires a person to play it must necessarily differ from a medium that seems to unfold on its own. But is that really true? Do books not require readers? And are the ways in which two readers encounter the same book not different, even if slightly? It becomes therefore a question of degree or the quality of engagement between a reader or a player and the text or cinema or game that they are engaging with. But games need not only be adapted from books. Indeed, there have been instances where movies have been made based on computer games. Computer games or simulation models can claim to be worthy of study in their own right according to their own terms. As an extension of this study of game culture, digital cultures also includes the analysis of cyber communities that form around these games. Studies into rampant sexism or gender bias in gaming communities are being conducted, and these generate enormous debates that are fought out both in academic conferences as well as on digital platforms. Each space of discussion often cites the other. As we mentioned earlier, this is not a comprehensive list of subjects, but a few stray examples. Listen to the following lecture. Take a look at the reading material and think what other topics can be studied under this broad head. Maybe you are in a position to take up some such research venture, even if on a minor scale, and produce an interesting study based on that.